I've always been fascinated with bread and the origins of bread, ever since my grandma said to me that bread is the staff of life, and it's true. And if you explore the shores of the Mediterranean, there are so many different ways of producing bread. We're going to do a really simple one for you today. It's got Arabic and Greek origins. It's pita bread. So, vamos a cocinar. Let's get cooking. We're going to start off with 250 millilitres or 8.5 ounces of water. Now water wants to be 110 degrees to 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 to 46 degrees centigrade. So if you can see that on the camera, we are at, we're just in 45.7. So that's really good. So in with the water. And then we want 1 teaspoon of white sugar and 2 teaspoons of active dried yeast. When we're cooking different things, we can sometimes get away with adjusting the ingredients only slightly to maybe to our taste. But when you're baking, it's really important to be exact with measurements so you get the right results. So we just combine the yeast and the sugar with a whisk. Then we're going to set this aside in a room to allow the yeast to activate. Now the ambient temperature you want for the room is between 23 and 26 degrees centigrade or 73 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to set this aside for 10 minutes. So whilst your wet ingredients is coming active, shall we call it, let's get the dry ingredients together. So we want a separate bowl, and into the separate bowl we're putting 330 grams of bread flour. You can use all-purpose flour if you want, or plain flour. And we also want to put in 1 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to just, again, using a dry whisk, just lightly whisk those ingredients together to combine them. So this has been activating for 10 minutes, and you can see on the top there how the yeast is really starting to come through and bubble up, which is good because sometimes, I know maybe you don't use yeast every day and it can sit on the shelf in the cupboard or in the pantry, and it has a shelf life. It might not be very good. So it's really good to do this because that tests your yeast to make sure your yeast is active before you continue with the rest of the process. Good to find out now that your yeast is not good and go and buy some more rather than get to the end of the process and find that your bread is not very good. So the last thing we need to add into the wet ingredients is 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. And that goes. So we've got our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients, so we're just going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. Pour it in. Then using a silicone spatula, or you could use a wooden spoon, whatever you got to hand, start to combine these together. So onto a clean work surface, we just want to tip this out. Now it's quite a wet dough. So I'm just going to wet and dampen my hands, which will stop the dough from sticking to my hand. So if you take your dough and divide it into thirds, take this third and we're just going to pick it up and then we're going to slap it over. But as you slap it over, move your hands out, okay? So again, pick this side up. And it's this slapping and folding technique that will start to activate the gluten in the bread. And when you first pick it up, it's all wet and ooh, but as you start to work it, you will notice it starts to form up, becoming drier and more manageable. So 6 or 7 of those slap and folds just to start off with. Then we're going to take a damp tea towel, I'm going to lay it over and then just leave it to rest for 10 minutes and we'll come back to it for some more slap and folds. Okay, so that's had 10 minutes. So we're just going to put the tea towel to one side, again with damp hands, this third in, and just work it a little bit more. Don't worry if it's sticking, it will all come good. Slap it down, fold, spread your hands. One more. Okay, again, cover it with a tea towel, leave it for another 10 minutes. So this has had a further 10 minutes and you can see it's already starting to grow and expand. So we're just going to give it one more slap and fold. 4 or 5. Okay, that's good. Right. What we want now is a clean bowl. And we're going to add just a little bit of olive oil into the clean bowl. And this is purely to stop the dough from sticking to the bowl whilst it's going through its first proving. So let's get the dough in. Turn it round, mix the top with the olive oil, turn it over. Take our damp tea towel. And then you want an ambient temperature for the yeast to activate between 23 and 26 degrees centigrade or 73 to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is going to take probably an hour and a half to activate and to do its first proving, or until the dough that you've put in has doubled in size. So this is a dough that we did prepare earlier. You can see how that has absolutely doubled in size. So it's looking good. Okay, so again, clean work surface. And this time we want some olive oil on the work surface. And we want to take the dough with your fingers. You can just work it out onto the work surface. Here it comes. Fantastic. And this mix will yield 6 pittas breads. So I'm going to take our pastry cutter, I'm going to divide it into half and then divide each side into thirds. Okay. Take a baking sheet and with some spray oil, which happens to be spray olive oil, of course, because we're in the Mediterranean. Liberally coat your sheet with spray oil. Then we're going to take each one and we're going to fold the sides in to form what would best be described as a mushroom shape. Or maybe you would call it a little mozzarella ball. Once we get to that stage, put it on the surface, cup our hand, and we're just going to work it just to form the shape that we need. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Onto the baking sheet. Okay, that's the last one. A little bit of more spray oil, just really to stop it sticking. And then we're going to cover it in shrink wrap or cling film and put it in the fridge for 2 hours. Just while I do that, I wanted to explain a little bit about the fermentation process with yeast. The process actually starts when the yeast comes into contact with the water. And that's where flavours come in, because alcohols and acids developed during that process. You can control the speed of the fermentation process using temperature. So we had it in a room which was 23 degrees to 26 degrees centigrade, which obviously provided quite a quick fermentation. What we want to do now is slow the process down. So we're going to put these in the fridge for about 3 hours. And the reason we want to do that is we want those alcohols and acids to develop flavour within the pitta before we roll them out and we bake them. Whilst the bread is proving, we'll light the wood-fired oven, which will take around 2 hours to get up to temperature. We're looking for a floor temperature in the wood-fired oven of around 430 to 450 degrees C. So our dough's had 3 hours for all those alcohols and acids to create some delicious flavour. So quite simply, very gently, we take our pitta off, generous with the flour, and on the top, and then we just work it through. Push it out. You're looking for about a 7-inch diameter. And then very lightly with your rolling pin, starting in the middle, we want to roll out. Doing that action will probably cause the pitta to stick to your rolling pin. So I'm not putting any pressure on really. I'm just rolling it from the center, rolling it out until I roughly get to the size that I'm looking for, which is about there. Then we're going to take our peel, flour our peel, get our pitta on, make sure we've got some movement and some play. Going to the wood-fired oven. Because of the intense heat in there, it will cook very quickly. And we will make sure, because the fire is now on the right-hand side of the oven, we'll make sure we go in a second and just turn it so that we get an even cook. Oh, no, amazing. So we're going to just pop it in here because the pitta will benefit from a little bit of steam just to keep it nice and moist. I know it's easy to go to the store and buy pittas, but they're dry, they're crumbly, they fall apart. These are soft, malleable, absolutely fantastic. They smell, oh, they smell delicious. And as an introduction into bread making, these are a really simple step. The taste, you could eat these on their own. They are absolutely perfect. Please do try baking them at home for yourself. And that's a wrap. No, it's not. It's a pita bread, really. It's not a wrap.